good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Sunday, 22nd June, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Iran is at the center of escalating tensions in the Middle East after U.S. air strikes targeted 3 of its nuclear sites, including Fordo, sparking global apprehension and internal debate within the U.S. government. President Trump described the damage to Iran's nuclear facilities as obliteration, a view supported by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, while Vice President J.D. Vance clarified that the U.S. is at war with Iran's nuclear program, not the country itself. In response to the strikes, which Iran has labeled outrageous, the nation asserts it reserves all options and has launched new attacks on Israel. To address the situation, Iran's foreign minister is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The U.S. bombing has intensified tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, raising concerns that Iran might use its oil card as retaliation, potentially closing the strait and significantly increasing fuel prices, particularly affecting Asian countries heavily dependent on Middle Eastern oil. China, being the largest consumer of Iranian oil, is especially vulnerable to supply disruptions. The U.S. strikes on Iran have reverberated through global markets, diminishing risk appetite and increasing volatility. Oil prices have jumped by over 2% due to potential supply disruption fears, creating a polarized oil market, and the IMF's Georgieva has cautioned about broader risks arising from the strikes. Bitcoin has also fallen, influenced by inflation concerns and market liquidations. Airline cancellations and travel disruptions have occurred, with the possibility of rising jet fuel costs. While some Gulf markets have traded higher, seemingly unaffected by rising regional tensions, Japan's Nikkei index has decreased due to Iran risks, although the losses were limited by a weaker yen. Oil traders and global investors are carefully watching Iran's reaction to the strikes. World leaders and the UN have responded to the U.S. strikes on Iran, with UN leaders raising alarms and calling for de-escalation. The UN Security Council has convened to discuss the situation and consider a ceasefire resolution. Bolton indicated that the U.S. mission in Iran is not yet complete. The U.S. military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities sent ripples through global markets, causing oil prices to jump 2% as investors sought safe havens. Fuel supply concerns are high in India, which is closely monitoring the situation. Gulf states are also concerned, as some airlines halted flights over the Gulf region due to escalating regional tensions. Stocks like TTS, Infosys, HAL, Bell, and Odyssey are now in focus. Australia's stock market suffered a significant blow in the wake of these events, with $10 billion arrests from the AS, leading to warnings for the superannuation sector after a $25 billion downturn. Local petrol prices are expected to rise by more than 5 cents a litre. The Australian and New Zealand dollars also weakened, mirroring the drop in global stocks. Despite the turmoil, Bank of America predicts increased demand for Australian debt. Penguin Solutions is aiming to expand its presence in Australia's edge computing sector. Japan is navigating a multifaceted environment of economic recovery and political shifts. Factory activity in Japan has shown growth, ending an 11-month period of contraction, according to the latest Purchasing Managers Index, PMI. This increase in PMI might be a preemptive response to a potential U.S. tariff hike. Core inflation has climbed to a 2-year peak, which increases the potential for a central bank rate adjustment. The Nikkei stock average has seen declines due to concerns regarding Iran, though a weaker yen mitigated these losses. Ahead of an upcoming auction, Japan revealed a substantial reduction in long-end bond issuance. Shareholder activism is gaining momentum as evidenced by shareholders rejecting Taiyo's CEO. To engage investors at shareholder meetings, Japanese firms are using strategies like offering complimentary items. In the political arena, voters penalized the ruling party in a Tokyo election leading up to the national election. Prime Minister Ishiba recently held a press conference. Japan and South Korea are observing 60 years of diplomatic relations, even as political instability and strains persist. The U.S. has not requested defense spending from Japan equivalent to 3.5% of its GDP. A heat wave is currently affecting the country, and deaths from heat stroke have been recorded. Turning to South Korea, the nation joins Japan in commemorating 60 years of diplomatic ties, set against a backdrop of political uncertainty and existing tensions. Hatojinro has introduced the premium Japanese Ekmeya Kanbai to the South Korean market. In the United States, no request has been made to Japan for defense spending equivalent to 3.5% of its GDP. But Tesla Motors is evaluating the Japanese market with a temporary showroom. The potential for the U.S. to increase tariffs is a point of concern in Japan. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, the travel reward platform Haymax is extending its business operations into both Japan and Hong Kong. Lastly, Iran's geopolitical situation has contributed to declines in Japan's Nikkei stock average, although the impact was somewhat lessened by a weaker yen. Saudi Arabia's economy sees robust growth, with Korea cement sales rising 6.4% to 13.4 million tons due to major projects. The nation aims to boost its culture sector's GDP contribution to $48 billion by 2030. The Saudi Pavilion at Expo 2025, Osaka has already welcomed 1 million visitors. In finance, Sport Clubs is pricing its IPO to potentially raise $69 million, even as the Saudi main index dips slightly. Paragon Developments expands its regional footprint with a new Riyadh office. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait are strengthening ties by collaborating to combat money laundering, as 42,950 Hajj pilgrims return. Former U.S. President Trump reportedly plans new projects in Saudi Arabia, fueling speculation amidst his political ambitions. However, UBS warns of heightened risks for Saudi Arabia as Iran considers retaliation, recalling the 2019 earthquake attack. China faces rising concerns as its working-class youth encounter difficulties in achieving prosperity despite their dedication to education and hard labor. The potential imposition of tariffs on wedding dresses manufactured in China is causing anxiety, particularly for U.S. brides, with David's Bridal CEO Kelly Cook actively addressing the issue. Morgan Stanley projects that Chinese automotive suppliers are poised to secure a competitive advantage in the rapidly evolving field of humanoid robot development. Yumchina, the operator of KFC and Pizza Hut in the region, has launched QSmart, an AI-powered tool aimed at improving the operational effectiveness of its store manager. The Korean food chain BBQ has marked a milestone by opening its inaugural store in Chengdu, expanding its footprint in the Chinese market. Conversely, PopMart, the company behind the popular Labu toys, witnessed a downturn in its stock value after a product restock and subsequent cautions issued by Chinese regulatory bodies. The recent surge in Hong Kong's stock market is influencing investment strategies related to China, while a downturn in China's property sector is prompting Hong Kong investors to explore opportunities in Japan. In the realm of international relations, Iran's parliament has passed legislation that could lead to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in response to U.S. airstrikes, sparking concerns about potential disruptions to the global energy supply and its repercussions for economies in China and across Asia. The United States is actively pressing China to intervene and dissuade Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial artery for global oil transportation. In response, China has expressed its disapproval of the U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran. Israel's ongoing conflict with Iran, exacerbated by U.S. involvement, has sent ripples through global markets. Crude oil prices have surged amidst heightened Middle East tensions, particularly following U.S. support for Israel and subsequent missile exchanges. Defense stocks, such as Apollo Microsystems, have benefited from the escalating hostilities. The Tel Aviv 125 index in Israel has demonstrated strength, closing 1.8% higher and achieving almost an 8% gain for the week, driven by the perception that U.S. involvement may lead to de-escalation. Turning to Saudi Arabia, the stock market initially responded favorably, before stabilizing despite the U.S. intervention in the conflict. Market analysts are keenly observing the evolving situation between Israel and Iran, alongside crude oil prices, as crucial determinants of market behavior in the coming days. Jigar Patel from Anand Rathi suggests DMART, Eicher Motors, and Biocon as potential short-term investments, attributing his recommendations to the market volatility caused by the conflict. Bitcoin has also seen a recovery in its value following the escalation. Further, Bharat Electronics Limited, Bell witnessed an increase in its share price, boosted by new order updates and the prevailing geopolitical landscape. India's stock market faced turbulence amid global uncertainties and domestic developments. Rising crude oil prices, coupled with Middle East tensions after strikes on Iran, caused the Sensex and Nifty 50 to fall by over 1%. Banking and telecom stocks, however, showed resilience, boosting market capitalization by 1.62 lakh crore. Accenture's Q3 results triggered a decline of up to 3% in the IT sector domestically. The IPO market anticipates a revival, although investor caution remains. India's aviation sector will be subject to a special audit following a recent crash. Globally, trading giants are expanding in India, increasing demand for skilled workers and infrastructure upgrades. Amazon's entry into the home diagnostics market has impacted diagnostic stocks such as Metropolis Healthcare and Dr. Lal Pathlabs, with declines of up to 3%. Russia's military actions have intensified, with a recent attack on Kyiv's civilian infrastructure, resulting in at least 5 fatalities. Amidst escalating tensions, a high-ranking Russian official has asserted that Donald Trump's actions have instigated a new conflict with Iran, a situation they believe will bolster the position of Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. This development has fueled speculation about potential Russian backing for Iran, possibly extending to nuclear support, particularly in light of recent U.S. strikes. Russia has vocally denounced the U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear sites. Adding to the geopolitical complexities, North Korea is reportedly planning to dispatch military construction personnel and demining experts to Russia. In a separate development, The Telegraph reports allegations that Russia is recruiting nuns across Europe for clandestine intelligence activities and to disseminate Russian propaganda. Turning to Ukraine, the European Union is contemplating more aggressive investment strategies involving seized Russian assets to generate funds for supporting Ukraine's defense against ongoing Russian aggression. United Kingdom's government is weighing the removal of green levies for heavy industries, aiming to stimulate economic expansion. Simultaneously, UK households are grappling with substantial wealth erosion, creating challenges for Rachel Reeves. Studies are being conducted to assess the competitiveness of UK stocks against US stocks for ISA investors. In other news, Mark Lynn, a fine arts graduate from a prestigious London university, has entered the gig economy due to difficulties finding employment in the arts following the pandemic. Turning to the Eastern European front, a Ukrainian commander stated that Russia has not signaled intentions to stop the ongoing war. The Kremlin has conceded that Russia is approaching a recession. President Putin is set to speak at an economic forum where the economic state of Ukraine will be a key topic. The United States launched a strike on Iranian nuclear sites, triggering immediate repercussions across global markets. Oil prices spiked, reaching a new peak. As stock futures and Asian shares both saw significant drops. In Iran, the government has condemned the U.S. action as a violation of international law. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei vowed retaliation. The attack has further strained already tense relations between Iran and the U.S. Across Asia, the U.S. strike on Iran sent shockwaves through financial markets. Negative sentiment dominated the opening of Asian stock markets. Asian spot long prices jumped to a 4-month high. This surge was fueled by worries about potential supply disruptions. Market analysts have begun pinpointing Asian stocks that may now be undervalued. South Korea's financial regulators quickly gathered for emergency discussion. They aim to assess and mitigate any financial instability, risks arising from recent U.S. military actions in Iran. The industry ministry voiced apprehension over the broader economic implications. The finance minister stressed the importance of close monitoring. He noted the airstrike's potential to reshape Middle East geopolitical and economic dynamics, demanding a prepared response. South Korean stocks saw a dip from a 3.5-year peak following the U.S. strikes, reflecting investor anxiety. Looking ahead, the South Korean Stock Exchange is set to introduce carbon emissions futures. This initiative comes as the country's LNG import strategy faces increased examination amid global energy transitions and environmental concerns. Europe is focused on bolstering its defense in response to Russia, planning increased spending and manufacturing unity. European stock markets are fluctuating due to global events. Initial declines occur due to Middle East tension. Markets later rebounded as fears of U.S. involvement eased. Investors are shifting to European markets, given U.S. stock uncertainties from Trump's tariffs and economic data. Wall Street analysts cite strong potential for European stocks. Canada is currently seeing Dow strengthening its dividend prospects after a legal victory. Analysts are also pointing to a specific Canadian growth stock as a strong investment for the next decade. Investment recommendations include focusing on 3 stocks under $50, noted for potential long-term returns. 4 dividend stocks are also highlighted as promising income options for investors. Hong Kong is experiencing concurrent economic recovery alongside Director C.I. Baolong's visit. A welcome development for Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiu. Switzerland is expressing deep alarm over the escalating conflict in the Middle East. It's worth noting that Switzerland formerly had sanctions against Syria, which were lifted after President Assad's fall from power. Singapore's core inflation has eased, mainly driven by lower recreation costs. The Singapore Exchange, SGX, recently added 6 new Singapore Depository Receipts, SDRs, to its listings, featuring 3 prominent Hong Kong companies and 3 Thai businesses. Currently, the Prime Minister of Singapore is in China for an introductory visit and is scheduled to attend the Summer Davos Forum. Indonesia is actively pursuing stronger ties with China, exemplified by the Indonesian People's Representative Council's DPR participation in Shenzhen Media Group's CMG Telling China's Story event. The event underscored the potential for increased collaboration between the 2 nations, particularly in technology. Meanwhile, Anti-corruption efforts within Indonesia have reverberated into the Singaporean market, contributing to a decrease in the value of Wilmar shares. In Singapore, Singtel shares have also seen a decline. The recent U.S. strikes in Iran, authorized by President Donald Trump against 3 nuclear sites despite his earlier promises of peace, have sent ripples through global markets. Middle Eastern stock exchanges in Kuwait and Oman saw declines, and British Airways suspended flights to Dubai and Qatar in response. The potential impact on Wall Street is anticipated. Turning to the United States, Evan Osnos's new essay collection, The Haves and Have-Yots, delves into the phenomenon of extreme wealth within the country. Furthermore, various states, cities, and towns across the U.S. are implementing financial incentive programs to attract new residents. In Iran, the aforementioned strikes by the United States, directed by President Trump, targeted 3 nuclear facilities. The Democratic Republic of Congo has prolonged its ban on cobalt exports for an additional 3 months, aiming to control supply. This decision has already resulted in a price surge for cobalt and an increase in related shares in China. Factors of interest in Italy on June 23rd are being closely monitored. Separately, reports indicate that Ireland has suffered the most significant losses from the European migration of talent to Wall Street. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, gas, General Advanced System, and Italy's Bonomi have entered into a joint venture agreement to establish a valve manufacturing plant. The Philippines is drawing attention for its distinctive economic performance. Exports to South Korea are projected to recover during the latter half of the year. In Brazil, a major paper company is expanding its global footprint. Additionally, Geely has partnered with Renault in a joint venture to broaden its presence in the Brazilian market. France is making a substantial investment of 1.35 billion euros in Eutelsat, positioning it to compete with Starlink in the satellite internet market. Bangladesh and Japan have formalized 6 memorandums of understanding, MOUs, to enhance cooperation. Finally, in Egypt, the euro has experienced a notable increase in value against the Egyptian pound, rising by more than 30 piastres. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.